Hey everyone, Nathan Nerdark here from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds, and today we're going to be talking about player tips. My character wouldn't do that, which is a phrase that people say in their mind sometimes, and we want to kind of discuss like the good and bad about that kind of concept. And with me I have
Ted
and Dave.
All right.
You said in their mind. I've heard it said at the table numerous times. So many times by certain players that you just want to punch them in the face after a while and go, "Why are you even here?"
Yeah, there's a couple.
Did you know that this is an adventuring game, right?
Yeah. There's a couple different threads that come down to the decision of my character wouldn't do that. Sometimes you have players who create a character knowing what the adventure arc is, and that character just is not going to work with it, you know, like.
And they do it anyway.
And now I'm gonna play devil advocate and say maybe they think it'll be okay and it'll all work out, but they are playing a character that is kind of the antithesis of somebody who will go on this particular type of story arc.
I've seen parties assembled en masse, and it's like, oh, I'm playing the neutral rogue, he's playing the neutral evil fighter, this guy's playing the warlock, and this person decides that they're gonna play the lawful good paladin. It's not a good party mix.
And as a DM, I just shake my head and be like, "You're gonna f up my game."
and going into that, that it's going to be a problem. You have the DM who says, okay, well, I run heroic games, and that's me. I tend to run games. I tell the people from the get-go, you have to be able to make heroic actions. You want to be a good guy. You can be, the lone evil person in the party who's in it for profit and personal gain, as long as you're willing to still do heroic things. I don't want people mercilessly slaughtering my town. That's what my NPCs are for. So you have
Ted's like, there's no way you guys are mercilessly slaughtering my town. That's my job.
Yeah.
So that's the second part. So you've got incorrect character creation, knowing your DM, the kind of stuff that's gonna be there, and then the third.
The third is this jackwagon who just goes, I don't care, I'm playing this character.
Yeah, and that's the third one, where you just aren't going to mesh with what's there. You aren't going to care about the the rich storyline that the DM is putting
ahead,
forth.
Torpedoes be damned.
So there you go. So what advice do we have?
Okay. We're getting to advice. I was about to say we got to get to the advice player tip part of this thing, not the DM rant part.
Yeah. I heard like the best thing, right? Someone had said, and I think it was like in a Facebook conversation or something, and they're like, "Well, you're playing the character. You control the character. Why won't your character do that? If your character won't do that, it's because you've decided that he won't. All you have to do is decide he will."
Right.
Within reason too. Like some things are kind of unreasonable. To put the expectation on the player and the characterization, but for the most part, there's wiggle room. You can kind of like figure things out. And in this scenario, it usually is the worst part is when someone creates that character that just is never going to mesh well, and they insist on playing that character anyway.
Right.
That is the biggest problem I've seen. I mean, there are other instances that have come up where it wasn't so much an instance of my character wouldn't do that. It was more of an instance of, well, this is what my character would do in that, and it happened in your game with my dwarf. You're like, he basically committed a murder because he was compelled by magic.
Right.
But he was fully aware of it, and he's a very lawful good dwarf. Mm-hmm. So, like, what's that guy going to do? Well, he's going to turn himself in.
And that was something I had not anticipated. Honestly, I was not expecting you to fully embrace the dagger and go hog wild and mercilessly start not necessarily a killing spree, but you literally just like, I'm just gonna cut their throat. I'm like, oh my god, you went with it. I put out there on the fly what wound up happening, and
well, the people that I agreed to kill were the bad guys,
right? And
then you failed your wisdom save.
Then you failed your wisdom save. You went out and killed somebody, and in between sessions, you and I wound up talking so that I could, deal with the information that was presented at the session and still allow you to be able to continue your character. It created an interesting, first part of the next session, that wound up putting you on trial and going through all of this,
and having all the other players interviewed by the watch.
Yeah, and it wound up creating a dynamic
I made myself
situation.
scarce then.
And it made for a good session. I took your character is in this situation. What do I have to do as a DM to continue letting you play your character? And, what do I do with the item that wound up creating some issues? Now, that dagger's still out there floating somewhere, and, clearly your character wants it destroyed.
So, some good points about that to bring up. First, you created the dagger, and, bad stuff could happen. So it wasn't like he made a character decision or based his character around this concept that this was going to occur.
Correct.
So this was like an unforeseen circumstance, and he dealt with it the way his character was going to deal with it, but he also talked with you about it to say, like, this is what I'm going to do.
Yes.
So from a player tip standpoint, I would say that a big deal is don't be the dagger creator. Don't be that guy that makes a situation that the DM's going to be like, oh, what the heck am I supposed to do now with you guys? Because conflict's going to arise between what the players want to do and what the DM says the world is doing to them.
Right.
But it's different when the person is in conflict with the person that's running the game. And I think that sometimes people can be like a little passive aggressive with how they choose to do their character. And to be kind of like, well, I'm just going to be like, the fly in the ointment kind of character. But it's really that fine line between aggravating the players, the actual characters in game, and aggravating actual people playing the characters.
I would agree with that.
It's like that same thing with being an aggravating player. You can do it a little bit, but you do it too much, and you're actually going to just be annoying everybody at the table.
Not their characters, but the players.
The players themselves.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of, especially the higher maturity players, the people that play for a while, they can deal with, okay, your character does this, and he's kind of aggravating in this way or that. But when you're just like constantly always butting heads against that player character about anything in the story, because they're just like kind of the antithesis of a person that would actually be involved in the story, then that's kind of that's like when you already know there's an issue.
Well, and there's ways to play that kind of character and play them well. And, in that exchange with me and Ted and that example we used, there's a really good player tip for you guys out there. And it's a really simple one, and it actually applies to so many different things in this game and life in general, is just open your goddamn mouth and talk. Have a conversation with the other person or people who are involved. And discuss what's going on.
Exactly.
I didn't ambush Ted and go the next session, oh, I'm going to get the DM so bad, he's not even going to know what to do. And go, oh, Ted, I turned myself in. No, I called him before the session and said, look, this is what I plan on doing. Is this going to be an issue? Should I bring in another backup character?
Yeah, that's he honestly says, like, am I still going to be able to play Ulfgar or Uzingar? And I'm like, well, I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to allow you to still do this. I don't feel that this kind of choice was a situation where it was going to be a Fulcrum. Oh, if he goes evil, well, that's it. He's done. He's going to be an NPC. He's got to roll up somebody new. No, I was not trying to present that situation with this. There are times that in a game that can happen, but especially at such a low level, that's not even in the realm of my consideration.
So just a clarification for what this video is about too, for you guys watching, is it's about conflicts arising from the characterization of a player's character. We like to say my character wouldn't do that because it's just kind of like funny and cheeky to say.
And people have actually said it.
But it can actually go in other directions. A good example, though, of a character that is the antithesis of the role-playing adventurer character who actually worked well in the environment and setting was when our friend Jim had played Giles the Librarian.
One of my favorite characters.
Who did not want to leave the library and go out into the world. And he abhorred everything there was to have to do with adventuring. But, he was forced into the situation. So so his characterization of that was actually really comical and funny, and he did an excellent job role playing.
It was a fantastic character. If any of you out there, are familiar with this story or whatnot, yeah, it's one of the best RPs that I've dealt with. I mean, it was like he would cringe every time his master would say, "Nope, you got to go back out there." It's like, no, I just want to study my books and read and.
And now, in real life, Jim did not want to play a game where he studied books and read all the time, and that's kind of that dynamic working. Is he was playing a character that was definitely not in line with his thinking, so there was no. It was fun to try and play that character out in the wild.
He knew going in that he had this archetype that he was going to play. And like every time, the story's got to give you a reason of why you need to be there, and magically there was always a reason why. And we'd go off on these grand adventures, and he'd sit while we're at camp, and he's basically petting his book. It's like, I wish I was at home, I wish I was at home. And it was hysterical.
Yeah, and a lot of that was set up in the very beginning, with a discussion between me and that player, and figuring out what the character wanted and what the player wanted, and how we were going to, maneuver around that, which wasn't particularly difficult to do.
No.
He basically his mentor kicked him out and said, "You come back in 10 years or whatever, and once you've got some of the world under your belt, and then we'll continue your studying." And that, so he had the incentive. So. What are some tips we can give people? It is a player tip thing.
It's a player tip, but so as you said, you want to have a conversation. If there's an issue after game has started or before game has started, open your mouth and talk it out. When you're planning your character, I find it's always best. We've talked about session 0, in a lot of our different videos. Yeah. If you get together and talk about what the party is together, what the actual story premise or some kind of information about the world that you're going to be in, that's going to give you information. We're running a game soon, and it's like, oh, well, is it going to be on the surface or is it going to be in the Underdark? That's going to vastly make a difference in what character I decide to play. So you've got conversation, you've got, further conversation, talking all together, knowing going in.
With a session 0, I've had some people who are like, oh, well, I don't want to waste time doing that kind of, basically a session that's a waste of a session. I was like, then you're going to waste the next 12 sessions screwing up with everything that's got to be dealt with that you didn't deal with in the first prep session. Yeah. Have fun for the next 11 and only have 11 sessions that are, really the game, or have 12 sessions that are not as good as they could have been.
On top of that, this is a social situation. Gaming is about getting your friends together and having fun. Typically, you're going to game with people that you get along with outside of the RP table. So if you're going to get together and socialize and make characters, it shouldn't be all that much different. If the love of the game is the only thing you have with these people,
Well, I mean, you can definitely do that. People do, but. And it might also be groups that, the kind of concept of the social contract. I mean, if I didn't know anybody and I was playing with 5 people, I'd want some kind of not a waste of my time, basically. Hey, I know kind of what's going to be happening.
But here's the other part of that. Even if it's you can do a little bit of role playing in session 0. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So, back to the idea of the characterization causing problems in your game as a player, how to avoid this is, one, you can just ask some really specific questions. Well, what is my purpose in being here at the table and in the game? And 2, when I'm coming up with this character concept, well, when you have this checklist of these things your character wouldn't do, because let's face it, when we start there, it's a blank piece of paper and we write it. We write the story, we write the characterization, we decide. If you're going to make all these things that your character isn't going to do, well, then you have to figure out what they would do, why they would do it, and you're taking part in a cooperative game. outside of the D&D world, but inside the D&D world, you're also taking part in a cooperative endeavor. So like if both of those aren't really in alignment, it's not going to make for a good game, and it's going to always cause friction. So, you really always need to make a character that's going to, in some way, shape, or form, be cooperative with the other characters at the table. Even if it's in an underhanded, manipulative way where he sees them as a resource. But at least he's interacting with them, and it keeps the party going forward together, because frankly at my table, if someone starts doing that stuff where my character wouldn't do that, I'll say fine, and tell me what you're doing right now. They'll tell me, and then I'll go through the other characters, and I may never go back to that player, because if they don't want to partake in the story or what else is going on at the table because their character wouldn't do that, well, I don't know, go farm, go harvest herbs or whatever, but doesn't make for a very fun gaming experience.
So on top of that, when you say my character wouldn't do that, find a way to say yes. Find a way to say, well, how can I make my character do that? If you're not the adventuring type, why are you why is this character in this game? And if it's like Giles the Librarian Mage, we've as the GM and the player, you work together to find a way for him to take that character on adventures. If you're playing this paladin in a group of evil or slightly shady, maybe he's gonna choose to go with them and say, you know what, I'm gonna
Jesus them.
I'm gonna deal with
be like the watchdog for the group.
I'm gonna deal with the evil, and I'm not gonna stop. I'll do whatever they want, but I'm not gonna stop until they're good guys.
Besides, it's not like it's tattooed on the back of their neck. So
unless of course it is tattooed on the back of their neck.
yeah.
Evil guy, evil gal.
This is true. Could be.
Since you are the ultimate controller in your character's actions, you're the only one that can say no. You're the only one that can say, well, my character wouldn't do that.
Yeah, so unless you develop like 100-page backstory on this guy, he's got wiggle room to decide to do something. Like you've got wiggle room to say, oh, yeah, this is the way he's going to go now.
And even if you do, characters can have that spur of the moment change, and it is far better to either find a way to say yes and move forward, or to say, you know what, I'm just gonna put this character aside and roll up somebody that's gonna go with this story, so that everyone has fun and not just you being a stick in the mud ruining it for everyone.
Acknowledge that you've made the mistake of making this character for this game. Even if you don't think it's your fault, be like, look, I should have this other character, but I don't think it has to go that far, because realistically, you can just be like, this guy's life stunk until now. He's gonna try something different,
right? Or
he's always been a poor wretch, so I heard adventurers make money. Like there can be something that's going to say like, hey, I want to change the way I am right now,
or
this could be it.
What about the conditional yes? Like my character wouldn't do that normally, but what would he need to do that? What would change that? And it could either be RP'd in. You could discuss it with your DM. As long as it's not too out in left field and too crazy. I think most DMs will work with you if you're trying to build story.
Yeah, let's say this guy, he doesn't waste his time with anything that's not killing an undead, and it's like, well, we're going to go raid some goblins. And then you could be, as the character, you can be like, well, have I heard any rumors that there's some necromantic goblins or necromantic activity or undead zombies in the swamp or what,
Well, yeah, or what about, hey, you could easily do, if I help you with these goblins, will you help me with this undead thing?
Yeah.
Like there's ways you can find to work around stuff, or you could even do like, I'm on a quest to do X, so this thing that you're talking about doing doesn't sound like my quest at all, but maybe it will get you something that'll help you on your quest. Maybe it'll procure a favor from someone to help you on your quest. Like, maybe you can manipulate the thing. And that's just an example. And it's kind of a bad one, because if you really make a character that has one goal only, in a party of players, you're going to be very disappointed, I feel, anyway. But
yeah,
they're having a character with a centralized goal is not a seriously bad thing, because it depending upon what that goal is. I recently made a character for an upcoming game, and his parents were murdered, and he doesn't know anything beyond like a symbol that was found at the scene. So he's hunting for clues, information, so that he can avenge his family. It's been years or whatever else. But like, I'm enough of a role player to be like, well, you never know where you're going to find a clue that's going to lead him towards the end of this quest. So he's been traveling all this time looking for this thing, and every day it's like a little bit more dreary, a little bit more dour that I might not find this thing.
Yeah, but so you're doing like you just said, I'm traveling looking for this thing. So like, that's all. That is actually a great backstory, because you're traveling and things just kind of happen, and it's not like you're obsessed and your sole focus is this thing, but this is your long-term objective and this is what you're working towards. Mm-hmm. As other things come up, sure, you deal with them. Oh, you know what? My parents were murdered, but this farm is being terrorized. I'm going to ignore it because it has nothing to do with me. No, but because maybe that guy's still a good guy.
Right.
He just had this tragedy and he's trying to figure it out. But he's like, oh well, these people need my help right now. I can get back to it.
Right. So as long as you're willing to still work within the parameters of the game that the DM is setting forth, any backstory can work.
So I think. Player tip flexibility, the ability to say like, well, I might only have like 2 or 3 major concepts for this character, but he's also has the flexibility to be and do other things besides just these 3 pillars of his identity.
Right.
Well, and going along with that, like, people change all the time. People change their minds. Their whole viewpoint can shift. There's definitely you can go from being real life stuff. You can go from being a derelict, drug addict, murderer to, a born again Christian with completely different set of values. You talk about opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this stuff does happen, and there's no reason why it can't happen in your game with small shifts in your character as you go, or big shifts if it's warranted.
Yep.
It's my annoyance with the alignment system.
Well, that's a whole other topic.
Well, again, that's a trap. The alignment system is a trap for a new player, that they think, oh, I'm going to play this particular type of character, and that's kind of this alignment. So to do things outside of what that alignment is supposed to be, like, so that's my player tip, is pretty much ignore that damn alignment system completely, because it's just going to hurt your ability to do what your thing is. Because
not necessarily. I mean, it's a guidelines, like, and if you keep them as loose guidelines, they work really great. But if you're going to be very, very stringent and you're going to stick to the exact alignment, and you mean, in your opinion, that means you never, if you're lawful good, you stray into the lawful neutral territory or the neutral good territory, then it becomes a problem.
Right.
But, I really see alignments as more of like a dimmer switch. And, depending on your alignment, that's where it's normally set to. But it can shift back and forth depending on what's going on. You can be lawful good, but if someone does something really horrible to you, you could switch to lawful good, from lawful good to kind of like chaotic, psycho, crazy evil, like that for a brief moment in time.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're now evil. It doesn't mean you're now chaotic. You're just traumatized.
It means you did, an action that is very much against your nature.
Yeah, so. I just think it gets kind of blown out of proportion, because she's like, well, I can't follow the rules because I'm this, or I don't break the rules because I'm this. It's like, well, you're still a person, and people are extremely fallible. So I see the alignment system as almost like saying that you're not fallible outside of this system of concepts. Like,
and
I'm neutral
that's
good,
where,
so I have to act like this.
well, then that's where the flaw is. Like
That's the flaw in the system that I.
but I don't know that it's a system flaw as much as it's a people flaw. You know, you know, if you take it as loose guidelines, generally not a problem. Like I don't really enforce alignments in my campaign really harshly. You know, if someone really goes off the deep end, yeah, you're gonna be like, hey, you know, you're really deviating from what you originally said you are. But, you know, I think we're getting a little bit away from, or maybe it loops back into my character wouldn't do that.
Right.
Oh, it absolutely does, because it's like, oh, I'm lawful good, so I would never do this.
Yeah.
That's like pretty much it. I'm this alignment, so I would never do X.
But then again, so there might be actually, you know, characterizations where your character's like that. Now that's absolutely, you know, I can absolutely see that.
Yeah.
But, you know, just because every character that's lawful good is the same exact way, no.
You know, you could have, you know, positions. You could have positions where it's like, you know, I will not, you know, I don't believe in telling a lie. You could be, you know, lawful whatever, and you know your character's just not going to lie. You know, if somebody asks him a question, he's either not going to answer or answer truthfully, and that's just how it goes. I mean, that's fine
For the most part, yeah.
you know.
I mean, people are still going to fail at that, at their own levels of.
Yeah.
People do that all the time. But
You know, so do we want to sum up or just wrap up?
Sum it up. Go ahead,
All
Ted.
right, so.
Bring it home.
So, as Nate says, you know, you want to be flexible. As you say, you want open communication. So you can talk with the other players, you can talk with your GM, and find a way to work through the issues. You want to find a way to say yes, and you want to have communication before your game starts, or when a problem happens, and make sure that the characters at the table are going to mesh well together. They don't have to be all chummy and perfect and all within the same scope. They just have to be able to work together so that you can go through with the story that the GM and the players are all working with together. You don't want to be that problem player that's, oh, my character wouldn't do that, and I'm gonna fight the other, you know, party members just because it takes away from the overall story. It takes away from the game.
Yeah. So the only caveat I would add to that is ask yourself: is what I'm doing adding to the fun of the game or taking away from the fun of the game? And you know, and by the fun of the game, I mean for everybody, not just you. You know, so that ultimately that's the objective. We play this game to have fun and camaraderie and hang out with our friends. So.
Indeed. So you know, if there's anything you feel that we've missed or said wrong, go ahead and put it in the comments below. While you're doing that, feel free to click like, share, even subscribe.
You can check out Nerdarchy, the store.
and you can check that out on nerdarchy.com.
So until next time, stay nerdy.